Here we go. All right, Piece of the Planet. It's a Deece of the Bishop. You know what it is, man. It's Bishop Chronicles. And I know if most of you saw any of the last episode, right, you saw Reverend Sensei Kawahatsu from the Konko Church in SF drop amazing knowledge on his life journey and about gratitude. Okay. And so one of the things, why am I doing this? Because like I see a lot of sad people today, especially men. And I think that when we look at America, the UK, and the world, we we miss a lot of the sadness, right? We miss a lot of the pain. And because we're not present to a lot of that pain within ourselves and observing it in others, a lot of people are dying. Okay. Right now, men account for 78 to 80% of all suicides in America, despite being 49% of the population. In the UK, men account for approximately 75% of all suicides, right? In the UK, men are roughly three times more likely to die by suicide than women. Okay. And this happens a lot more for unclear reasons. In the North, Scotland, Northern Ireland, things like that, and higher rates than in England and Wales. Right. And so I have Matt Robbo, one of my favorite people on the planet, one of my favorite people in Leeds. He is the guy that gave me one of my favorite books ever. Oh my God. You know how sometimes a guy will just give you a book, change your life? That's what happened to me. I'm over at IMA. I'm chilling, doing jujitsu stuff as I'm known to do. And he's chilling, watching. He's like, man, you got to read this. That's not my best Northern accent, but it's my best attempt at a Northern accent. And dude, the Gates of Fire, game changer. I was late to the party. Don't be late. This is where it's at. Matt Robbo, thank you for being on Bishop Chronicles.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, I mean, the thing is, you do a lot. I met you through Professor Mike Bates of GBRL in Leeds, where I was training a lot for a spell there. And he was doing this thing called the Next 45, which was for middle-aged men. It was a retreat, and it was unbelievable. I had a good time there, and that's where we met, where you were kind of doing the cold immersion therapy. If you go on Bishop Chronicles, I'll pull it up and try to add it to the intro to this. You can see me get in the water. Liam filmed it. My boy Liam filmed it, and what was hilarious is he didn't say he was going to film it, but thankfully he started late because my first 10 or 15 seconds, I thought I was pretty close to a stroke or a heart attack, but Matt talked me through it, got me centered up, and I was fine. And it was so great for me. And of the entire trip, that was the most stressful theory of it. Now I'm the keynote of that event, a keynote speaker, but I'm worried about getting in this ice bath. And he coached me through it fantastically. We've been very cool since then. And he also did a breathwork clinic in my resilient men's group session, which was also beautiful. Man, can you kind of like you do so many good things? Can you kind of just explain to people what you do, and then we can talk about how you ended up doing it?
Yeah, so currently I'm a health and well-being coach, which is quite a broad term, but essentially it is helping people with their overall mental and physical health. So, and that's through lifestyle change. So it's anything non-clinical really. So
Right.
it's looking at all aspects of health. So diet, sleep, exercise, stress management, uh, substance use, and all that kind of stuff, and trying to help them navigate to get into a place where they're able to do it all on their own. Basically, that's the idea.
And you're an interesting guy because you have like you were in the Royal Marines, right? Like you you're pretty cool.
Worn a lot of hats in my time.
Yeah, 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 and Royal Marines are really tough people. How did you end up in the Royal Marines? What was that journey like? Like how did you end up doing that? Because that I mean like are and you got to forgive my lack of understanding of 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 the UK military system. I mean, a Royal Marine is essentially like a Navy SEAL, right? Or it's these in the near categories of a SEAL, right? You guys do a lot of intricate work.
Yeah, it's kind of like like the equivalent of Navy SEALs is like the Special Boat Service, which is like special forces,
Yeah.
and then you've got like one step below that is like the Marines and
Okay.
the Paras, and then below that you've got conventional like infantry. So it's like kind of it's a middle ground between regular soldiers and like
Right.
special
Okay.
forces.
But
Yeah,
like the physical test to get to be a Royal Marine is pretty hectic, yeah?
yeah. It's like I I actually got in the Marines uh, through wanting to prove someone wrong. So like I just wanted to be in the army. Like from the age of about 14, I was just obsessed with the military. It's very like boyish, like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
want to be in the military. And I wanted to be a soldier, like that's all I wanted to do. And one day, like this is one day at school, I'd already sort of everyone knew that's what I wanted to do. And there's another guy in my class who was a bit of a one of these who can just do everything. He's great. He's like mega at everything. Like he's really intelligent. He's like one of the best on all the sports teams and all that. And he was sat next to me, and this other kid came over, and I said I was joining the army, and this guy's like, well, Malk's joining the Marines. I bet you couldn't do that kind of thing. So that was it then. So I
You
was
were like
like,
challenge
yeah,
accepted.
I was like, a challenge accepted. So I started looking into it, and then the more I learned about that, I was like, that's what I want to do. That's like seriously awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I just started training like 15. I was just doing loads of like running. There's no like an internet like this is how you get in things. It was
Yeah.
you just made it up as you went along. So you basically just loads of running, loads of press ups, sit ups, and all that. And then I applied when I got to, I think I applied at 16, and I got accept. You have to do an initial like 3 day, like physical, 3 days of physical tests to be accepted to start.
Okay.
And then once you started, it's 9 months of like training basically.
Okay.
Um, and that culminates in the doing the commando tests, which is like four tests you've got to do. You do one each day, like 5 days. You have one day in the middle where you do 3 days where you do a test each day. You have a day off, and then you do the final one's like a 30 mile um, speed march across Dartmoor down south, and you've got like 8 hours to do that with all your kit on and everything and navigate and stuff. So yeah, but by the time you get to that, everyone's got injuries and like you're just absolutely at your lowest ebb, and you've got to do a 30 miler to finish. So yeah, I
How did it feel
interested.
when you got in though? When you got through, how did you feel?
That was it. Like that was it. I peaked too soon. That's the problem. Yeah. So like at 17, I passed commando training. Um, Ironically, Malk, the other guy, he ended up joining the Navy instead. Like so, I ended up
Hilarious.
I ended up winning that little wager. But yeah, that was all I ever wanted to do. And I did 5 years in a commando unit up in Scotland, and then which is kind of a common theme for me. I got bored because there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, ironically, I left in 2000, and like 12 months later, obviously, the whole world went mad, and
Right.
lots of stuff started happening. But I left sort of a year before anything started happening because I was
Mm.
just I did a lot of. I was going. We were away most of the year doing. We were in Africa and all over the place. Africa,
What
jungle
parts of Africa
training,
were you in?
Zimbabwe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we did a few months in Zimbabwe and jungle training in Brunei. We did some stuff in like out in out in Europe, like with other forces and stuff. So I did two sort of stints in Norway, like winter, like mountain Arctic warfare training up there. So I did loads of cool stuff,
Mm.
and it was an absolute blast. And I'm still really good friends with a lot of guys I served
Yeah.
with, but I just got itchy feet because I was like, nothing's happening. I
Ah,
joined the
he's like, I need more.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I left, which has been one of my sort of yeah, I've been wrestling with that decision ever since. But um, so yeah, that's how I ended up in the Marines. I was just obsessed with Platoon, the film. That's basically it. I just used to watch it every day, pretty much.
Hey,
And
Pile. You know what I'm saying? Like,
so
no,
yeah,
that's crazy. So, you know, how did you get into doing the breath work and the ice bath stuff? Can you tell me a bit about how you became aware of it? Because you're really good at teaching it and you understand it a lot. Can you just break down your journey into that phase of your life?
yeah, I started. That was off the back of. Um, So like fast forward, I went into the police as well after I left the Marines. I went chasing like more like hoping that that was going to sort of scratch an itch around like adrenaline and all that kind of stuff, and it turned out not to. But I kind of got stuck in that.
He said it turned out not to.
It was pretty awful. But I got stuck in that job because it's very hard to leave that job. So anyway, I ended up fully kind of retraining and starting from scratch again in like 2014. I'd retrained as like a sports therapist, doing like treating sports injuries and stuff like that. And I'd also retrained as like a strength coach as well. So I came out and started I did about a year of just coaching individuals, and then I had the opportunity to open a gym, opened a gym, and kind of throughout this whole process, I've always been really, I'm just obsessed with knowing as much as I can possibly learn about everything. So, as part of like deep dives into Olympic weightlifting and all the training side of it, I was just starting to get more and more kind of drawn into the idea of just like what is health and how do we get healthy and I came across somewhere I can't remember where, but I came across the breath work I think was probably first, and I started learning about that through various means, and then about 10 years ago, probably a bit more now, I stumbled across the ice bath kind of phenomena, and no one was really doing it then, and it was quite sort of it was very sort of niche, and it was hard to find any sort of information on it, but I did manage to find a book that kind of was really interesting and gave you a lot of the science behind it and all that kind of stuff, and the backstory to it all. So I just started trying it. Um, and I think for me, with a lot of the stuff I like when I'm working with like clients or I'm programming training programs, whatever it is, or if I'm talking about nutrition, I it's if I'm asking somebody to do something, I've done that for probably 3 or 4 or 5 years before I start. I want to know that it works and that it's solid and it's legit before I start kind of encouraging other people to do it. So yeah, I started with the ice baths and I just went like doing them every day pretty much. And then
Year was that? What year was that?
it's probably like 2015, 16. 2015, I reckon. I got a friend had his bathroom redone, and the old bath got ripped out, and I basically got his bath off him and put it in the back garden,
I
and
heard that.
I used to fill it up, chuck a couple of bags of ice in it, and that's how it started. And then after about a year of doing that, I bought like a chest freezer, and turned like modified that into like a proper ice bath in the garage. So yeah, I went in kind of I went sort of really deep on it. It's like with all these things, you start out kind of just curious about what it's about and why you're doing it. But then the thing I found with breathwork and ice as well, it's it and it sounds a bit corny, but you learn a lot. You kind of through doing it, you realize why people do, like why it's been done for so long. Like a lot of these
Yeah.
practices, breathwork, obviously 2,500 years ago, Shaolin monks were doing breath work. It's always been in yoga, like that's a
Yeah.
huge part of yoga. Um, and it's no coin like these things don't stick for 2,000 years if they don't work.
Yep.
I think obviously Western science and medicine is quite kind a bit arrogant in that respect, and kind of until recently
Yeah,
it's
it's
always
it's weird how slow the West has been to
yeah,
incorporate certain things, but I mean, I
or
always
just
just
or just
assume that that's about
assuming
profitability.
yeah, and or just assuming things like woo woo. If it's like because it's from an Eastern thing, or like if it's an ancient thing, it's just this assumption that it's just kind of ceremony, or it's just a bit sort of woo woo. Where actually the science is now catching up with things like ice baths and obviously like breath work. The science is catching up with meditation was woo woo until they
Bro,
started
meditation has
fMRI.
been one of the biggest game changers in my life. I
Yeah, yeah,
swear. I
yeah,
swear. Breath work as well, right?
yeah.
Now, after I met you and I did the ice bath thing at the next 45, I don't think I told you, but I was doing those uh in my apartment with T. You know what I'm saying? Like we had this cool bathtub at our second apartment, and we used to be there. And then when he would leave, I would just like fill up the tub with cold water and leads in the winter. The water coming out the pipes alone is freezing, right? And so I would spend really good time in there, 10, 11 minutes, whatever, work on my breathing. And I found it to be amazing. I've drifted from it. I actually plan to start going back to it within the next month. Um, but I wanted to ask you, I have a book. Hold on. Do you know Stanislav Grof? Do you know him? Do you know that name?
No.
So he and his wife Christina have this book called Holotropic Breathwork. Okay?
Yeah.
Holotropic
Okay.
Breathwork. Now, I bought this, but I haven't finished it. So I'm not going to lie to you about that. I bought this book, but I have not finished it. However, this book is pretty incredible. What I have read from it is amazing. And basically, what they do is they use breath work to set up within the human being LSD and mushroom like mind states. And
Hmm.
bro, it is incredible the work that these two have done. Yeah, holotropic breath work. It's definitely something that people should look into, but it's also something that you can't do casually. Like I know people who have gone to holotropic breath work retreats and they've seen people either hurt themselves physically or get into mental states that were not lit, you know what I mean? And things like
Yeah.
that. So these are things that you have to really be patient and consistent about. We just had, and I know you saw the conversation with Master Way, David Way, right? And we're talking about meditation and out of body experiences and elevating your consciousness and stuff like that. And he mentioned somebody who you know kind of lost it, and I've known people that have lost it. But you know what? Those people are few and far between. I have to admit, like for every one or two people that I know or heard about, there's more than I can even try to enumerate that have just benefited unquestionably and for long periods of time with meditation and breath work. Can you tell me for yourself what were some of your first personal reflections, memories, and experiences that told you that breath work, meditation, and the ice baths were good for you, right? Irrespective of what you knew or didn't know about science.
Yeah, I think so. Like going, I have holotropic like breathing, and there's various sort of practices that are kind of very strong medicine. Um, and I have done that, but I've done it with a coach. I think you've met like Maya and Pablo, aren't you? Yeah. So Maya has coached me through. It's not. She wouldn't say it's holotropic breathing, but it got me to those states that
Kind
you're
of
talking
states.
about.
I,
Yeah,
I
which
I love those two. Please tell them hello next
I
time you
will.
see
I
them.
will.
They're
So
they're
yeah, I've kind of experienced that, But that's not something I'd. Um, you definitely don't want to do it on your own, and you definitely need somebody who knows what they're doing, kind of
Yeah,
coaching you.
yeah.
The breath work I do, there's so many different practices that you could try. But for me, a lot of the stuff that I do personally and that I try and encourage others to do is all down regulation stuff. So um, that and trying to sort of, what's the word, resolve dysfunctional breathing patterns. So it's more to do with the stuff I do. A lot of it is Bateko method is one of them, and like Patrick McEwen, he's kind of taken Bateko and sort of developed it into the oxygen advantage, which is that's one of the things that I'm sort of trained in and that
Can,
I coach
can you
people.
tell people? Because I don't know what that is, and I'm excited to learn. So will you tell me?
Yeah, so Dr. Bateko, he was a Russian doctor. Um, he's fairly recent. I think he's passed away now, but he's not that long ago. And his whole thing was trying to he was trying to treat asthma basically. That was the big thing, trying to treat asthma. And he'd recognised through his own observations, and I think also going on a tangent, I think it's David Catlin, the guy who spent a lot of time with like the American Indian tribes and stuff back in the 1800s. One of his observations was that mothers would like put their fingers on kids' lips. If kids were mouth breathing, the mother would like put a finger on the lips just to make sure they were breathing through the noses. And he'd also noticed some issues around like how the structure of the mouth changes and things like that if you're a mouth breather.
Mhm.
Um, so then fast forward to Bateko, he realized that a lot of asthma and breathlessness and issues with all like dysfunctional breathing were due to kind of it's kind of how society, a lot of this is societal and like modern day impact on us humans. So stress, living in urban environments with poor air quality and all that kind of stuff, it all led to people breathing out of their mouths, like predominantly mouth breathing. And that in itself, plus stress, tends to have us breathing up in our chests, and we stop using our diaphragms properly. And then that as well lends itself to reducing our ability to tolerate CO2. And once you can't tolerate CO2, we can't efficiently take oxygen on board, which means we get breathless. We have short, shallow breathing, and that can lead to all sorts of sort of chronic illnesses as well. So
That's deep, man. That is
yeah,
really
so
deep.
he developed a breathing a sort of a method to retrain people how to breathe properly, and that's kind of what I do with people.
Dude, I think it's really fantastic, man. It's really impressive. I'm always like when you did the clinic thing in the resilient men's group, man, like everybody was blown away when we got off. Like I got so many texts and calls like, yo, that was amazing. That was incredible. And I also think because you're so personable and kind, it 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 doesn't have like a sterile clinical or like a weird hippie vibe. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Yeah.
think that's what happens when people think about breath work, right? They either think of something that's super sterile and clinical, or they think of something that's super hippied out. And there's nothing wrong with either of those, right? But I guess what I'm saying is those extremes can, to a lot of people, especially people that don't do it already, seem far away, out of reach, out of, you know what I mean, not personable. And so I appreciate the everydayness that you bring to such a unique and complex practice, you know.
Yeah, I think so. My sort of spin on it really is, and this is the same with the ice, but it's more with the breath. I think we don't kind of realize how I say we. I'm obviously speaking
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
everyone, but we we are again due to modern life and the sort of fast pace of it and how overstimulated we are and all that. Our nervous systems are kind of heightened all the time. We're in this kind of like overstimulated, heightened state a lot. Um, and using the breath is the easiest way to sort of tap into and to down regulate and to kind of bring the nervous system back to a calmer sort of state. So you've heard of like the parasympathetic state. That's what we want to
Right.
be in. So that practice of the oxygen advantage, kind of breath technique, and Bateko, the real sort of beauty of it is it just it brings that calm and it sort of it down regulates the nervous system, so it slows the heart down, like it brings your heart rate down, it brings your nervous tone down, so it kind of it's just relaxing and very calming. So like for me, that's something that again a lot of people come to me. I like the one of the best ways to sort of deal with stress is to kind of work out how to A, mitigate it, and B, offset it with tools like doing some breathing practice, just to kind of bring everything down, especially towards if you want to get a good night's sleep, you don't want to be getting into bed in this kind of like super
Mm.
heightened
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
state. So that's just one of the tools. I think the beauty of breath work as well is on like obviously you and I both big fans of meditation, but it can be meditation can be more stressful for people than not meditating. Like it's hard to do. It's a hard concept to sort of understand. A lot of people struggle with meditation, and it can be very frustrating. It can almost make things worse, especially if you've already got race in mind and you're sitting trying to meditate and it just gets worse. It can actually stress people out more. Whereas with the breathing, because you're concentrating on the timing of it and the sort of, there's various sort of cues I give people to sort of to focus on. It just takes away that element of trying not to think, trying to sort of meditate. It is very meditative, but it's sort of I think it's a lower barrier of entry for people, rather than meditation, and it
You
can
know,
often lead to it.
I have to say that I agree, like a lot. I totally agree. And one of the things that I find is that people come to me and they say, you know, Adis, I tried to meditate, but like I can't empty my mind. I can't empty my mind. And I'm always like, your mind's not supposed to be empty.
Nobody can.
Right? Like, yeah, like that's everybody. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think that's a big part of it. I also think, especially in the West, I'm talking about America, but I'm sure it's the same in the United Kingdom, is this whole situation around culture and language, right? Where, people will say, oh, if you're speaking in another language, you're talking to the devil, right? You must be talking to Satan if you're speaking Sanskrit. You must be talking to Satan if you're speaking Arabic or Japanese or, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. And so, one of the ways that I have kind of leapfrogged over those kinds of perspectives with different people is to focus on the breath because no one can say you're corrupting their spirit if you're just working on your breathing. No one can say Satan's in the building if you're just counting and breathing. We're just counting and breathing. In my jujitsu practice, every class I teach meditation for at least like probably like 2 minutes every class. You know what I mean? And I do, and it's breathing meditation, right? And I do that because I want my students to know how to center themselves before, during, and after a situation. You know what I mean? I talked a few episodes back about how when my last trip to the UK, this customs lady agent was giving me some drama, when I came in. And rather than get upset, I just immediately started doing 4-4-4 breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Because, like, I knew I hadn't done anything, so I wasn't worried about a kilo of cocaine being found in my bag or whatever. That wasn't the case. But I could also see that she was trying to provoke me into some kind of state. So I just used the breathing as a grounding thing, and then I was let go in like 3 minutes. You know what I'm saying? but like
Mhm.
I didn't let the situation change my breath. And so that's not something new. I've been practicing as soon as I start to feel angry, sad, scared, right? Deeply confused or irritated, I will just 4-4-4 it or 4-7-8 it. You know what I mean? Until I forget that I'm doing it. That's how I do it. I do it until I forget that I'm doing it. Because if I forgot that I'm doing it, then I must have calmed down and I'm off to, you know what I mean? The proper mindset.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and I think for trying to introduce men to these kind of self-care practices as well, and like down regulation stuff, it's like I feel like it's an easier sell, like teaching them some breathing techniques, especially like obviously like the box breathing, it's like a Navy SEAL thing, so it's a bit more macho in it, but
Come on,
I
let me
feel
show
like
you how to breathe like some of the best warriors we've got, brother. You know what I'm
exactly.
saying?
So yeah, I kind of feel like it's an easier sell to guys, especially than like meditation. Like you say, there's a lot of baggage that comes with that. People's preconceptions of it and all that. So yeah, I just try and keep it kind of easy
Can I
access.
can I ask you? I think this is like, and okay, everything I'm about to say is just my observation. It's not a fact. Okay. So years ago, um, I became consumed with different kind of philosophies and um yeah, philosophies in and around Tibet. Okay, in and around Tibet. So they have this big mountain up there. I know you're a big mountain climber and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? They have Manasa Rover, right? Also known as the Great Snow Jewel, also known as Mount Kailas. Okay, so it's a very sacred space. And so back in the days, and I'm talking about like 1991, I was into this, right? 1991. And they have a lot of Buddhists up there, of course. And they also have this second group called the Bon, the Bon, the Bon cult. So back in the day, the Bon and the Buddhists used to battle each other. But you know how Buddhism is, little by little, it kind of, right? So the Bon Buddhist people, they do this pilgrimage to Mount Kailas, but they make a full body prostration every step. So they're like meditating and they will be I'm talking about straight face and stomach on the ground, get up, next step. And they do it the whole pilgrimage. Okay. And so I'm watching this documentary. It used to be on something, the series was called Terra X. Terrax, Terra X. And so I remember seeing that. That's how I got like fascinated with Mount Kailas and all this other stuff. And that led me at that time, not long after that, I wrote for the Yoga Journal. I wrote this article on like hip hop and like meditation and stuff like that. And I had like Shaolin monk Xian Ming, and I had like one of the guys from hieroglyphics, like Tajay, and some other people, right? Xian Ming is the guy that teaches Kung Fu to RZA from Wu-Tang, right? And so I interviewed him and stuff like that. And he was talking about meditation before I was really into it. I was more of a straight yoga person, right? But looking into yoga, I started learning about Tibetan yoga, also known as Yantra yoga, right? Yantra, Yantra yoga. And right now, if you go on YouTube, I'll find it and I'll put it in the intro. There was this guy from Italy who had studied with the Tibetan yogis, and this is separate from the five Tibetans. If you know what the five Tibetans are, there are certain series of breathings and moving postures, but they're not like traditional yoga. Anyway, Yantra yoga, always into Tibetan stuff. And then when Wim Hof evolves and pops out, I noticed that a lot of the stuff he was doing was a lot of the stuff they were doing. And so, like, they could sleep in the snow. Like straight up. Like I've seen them dudes like have just a straight cloak on. They kind of get into like a fetal position, but they're on their knees. They put their cloak on and just the top of their head is sticking out. Bro, they'll be in the snow like overnight. And then whenever they feel like it, they'll just pop up and start walking. Right. And so I was blown away by that. I've always loved Tibetan spirituality, Tibetan yoga, and those kinds of traditions. And when he popped out, I was like, that's Yantra type stuff, bro. But like when he gets interviewed I've been waiting for him to say, yeah,
Yeah.
actually, a lot of this stuff comes from the Yantra tradition. Da da da. It's my understanding that he spent some time there. You know what I mean? And I always feel conflicted, not because he hasn't, that the work itself isn't effective, isn't even his. I'm sure he's innovated it in tons of different ways, but like I always wrestle with this like tug of war between when does modern innovation become cultural appropriation, and how do we balance any of this stuff? Like you were talking about how yoga obviously goes back super long, and you know what I mean. I think there's a lot of every I think local tradition probably has a breathwork tradition, probably has a meditative tradition, like, but I've never seen him like openly acknowledge the yantra tradition, like when you're observing and studying these things, how do you interpret? Do any of these things like come across your head and heart? And like, what do you take from it, if anything?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in like of the Shaolin stuff. I'm a big fan of like
Yeah.
Xiangyi and all that. So yeah, I definitely I appreciate where it's the lineage of it,
Right.
uh, and I just think it's yeah, it's a gift in it. Like if you, I think of it as like the Bateko method, like he's come up with that, but I'm sure like Doctor like the original Doctor guy, I'm sure he's not just come up with it from nowhere.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
nothing's new, is it really? Like there's very
Yeah.
little. Everything's like reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
Stuff will go away and come back. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, kind of like I'm not that kind of well versed on Wim. I know um he's done a lot of yoga. I know that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I've not really done much delving into him.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
that's
it's
interesting. I just wanted to run it by you because I'm like a
yeah,
weirdo about Tibetan stuff. That was it. I was just kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
going in
No,
my
it's
Tibetan wormhole. But before we bail, man, I wanted to um kind of ask you, like, I still struggle with looking at how many men just in my like social circle really appear to be depressed, really appear to be disconnected from themselves, just kind of addicted to the daily grind, especially in the Silicon Valley, man. You know what I mean? Like the valley is beautiful, innovative, it is fun, it is exciting to be on the cusp of so many great minds at the same time doing all kinds of different things. But especially when you see the middle-aged guys and some of the older guys, like and honestly, even the women of Silicon Valley, you know what I mean, have their own, you know what I mean, because they got to deal with gender bias and all kind of stuff, plus trying to be a mom, plus trying to be the next innovator of whatever, right? Like what advice do you give to adults like that, specifically the men, but just in general, on where to start to begin the reconnection process with their body and their mind? Like what advice do you have for them?
um yeah, I think like for me it's about um you've got to look at the full picture, and like one of the reasons kind of I was frustrated running the gym that I ran later on was that it was just all training. So I was seeing people coming in, and again it was predominantly kind of like late 30s, middle-aged like people coming and using the gym. They're all it's quite an affluent area, so they were all like business, they all had their own businesses or they had
Mm.
quite sort of high-powered jobs or whatever. And I could see that like the training is like the exercise piece is just one piece of like the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was getting more and more frustrated because I could see that these individuals were clearly like struggling, not nothing like super serious, but
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
were a lot of anxiety, a lot of, you know high stress, um, juggling, like you say, work, family, and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't really the right space to kind of. I tried, but
Of
it wasn't
course.
the right space to introduce the concept of like diet's not too hard to sort of include in there, but it wasn't very well received because they're just coming to the gym to train. So I'm trying to kind of get these other things across, but it's a hard sell again. So diet, sleep is obviously a massive one that a lot of people kind
I
of.
struggle with sleep heavily, man.
Yeah. Stress is a massive one. Um, like alcohol. Not talking about being alcoholic, but just sort of that's another issue that a lot of people kind of run into. So unless you're kind of addressing all these bits and pieces, just going to the gym is sometimes just adding fuel to the fire as well. If you're super stressed, you're not sleeping, you're having to caffeinate all day to keep yourself to get through the day, because you're tired and you're feeling like shit because your diet's bad. You're just grabbing food on the go. Your diet's not great. Then when you get to the gym and then that is another stress. If you're doing quite intense hard training, then that you just adding kind of you're just ramping up your stress hormones, and it just adds fuel to the fire. So you've got it. So that's kind of I've moved into like the health coaching realm, which is more of like let's look at everything and let's start chipping away at everything, because without trying to sort of overhaul someone's life and completely reinvent them, I just try and give them some like actionable things to start improving their sleep, getting them eating properly, getting them doing exercise that's conducive with getting fitter and stronger, but not to the point where it's becoming a negative, and it's
Mm.
getting them injured and getting them burnt out and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
just trying to sort of basically get them on an even keel with everything. But a lot of the time, excuse me,
No, it's all good. It's all good.
a lot of the time, things like this job that's all consuming can be, the elephant in the room, the thing that might need looking at and might need it sort of a serious think about, because
Yeah.
uh, with all the best will in the world, if you're running your own business, you're working like 12 hour days, 7 days a week, and you've not got time to fit all these other things in, and you're not going to get good sleep, and it's just impossible to kind of get everything in place if that thing is just kind of in the way of everything. So sometimes it's that kind of hard conversation of, well, as long as you're doing this job to this degree, then you are going to feel like this, because the body can only put up with so much stress and anxiety and all that jazz. So yeah, it's difficult to get the balance, but balance is the key. You've got to find a balance and get everything working together.
No, man, I think balance is the key. And I think balance is the new single by Master Killer, RZA, and a whole bunch of other people. You know what I mean? So we're gonna look for it with them. We're gonna listen to the jam. I appreciate you for making time, man. I
Cheers.
hate that every time somebody dope comes to town in hip hop, we don't get to go together. Like it always makes me. But
Yeah,
hopefully before the summer's out, I'll get out there and we'll raise the roof properly. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
So, and
Cool.
also thank you again for the Gates of Fire, man. I really love this book.
Yeah, thank you.
You
Yeah.
know, I'd always heard of Stephen Pressfield, but I'd never read any of his work. And then I read this. And then did I tell you about that one audiobook I came across? Or maybe you told me
War of Art.
the no the I that one actually I actually read that before, but I didn't realize that it was the same. I didn't realize he was Gates of Fire guy for some reason. It
Yeah.
didn't. But the Warrior Ethos, I think it's called.
Okay.
It's a short audio book. I don't know if it's a physical book. It's a short audio book on Warrior Ethos that I guess he did for military people, but
Uh,
it's short, but it's just
well,
amazing.
yeah, he's one of his other books is Man at Arms. That's really, really good as well.
Okay. All
It's
right.
Yeah, I'd say it's as good as Gates of Fire, so check that
What?
out.
Okay, beautiful, man. Well, thank you so much. Tell everybody where they can get a hold of you before we go, because that's important.
Yeah, cheers. I'm so Instagram Integrity Through Action is my Instagram account, and you can like just yeah DM me on there if you want to
Yeah.
do any work or ask any questions or whatever.
I'm telling you, man, this guy is amazing. Thank you so much for making time to be on Bishop Chronicles. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and information. And I look forward to seeing you next time I get out there to the UK.
Cheers, so good to see you, mate.
All right, man. Always, always. One love, one love.